Well, thank you for having me. New beginnings. Thank you, Lord. Today, as Dr. Clark said, I am a veteran of the United States Navy. I served 21 years, 3 months, and 22 days. Not that I was counting or anything like that. But I had fun in the military. And the one thing that I remember about the military is this. There was always a form of camaraderie between the service members. There was always camaraderie. And then camaraderie in its simplest definition means good fellowship. So we had good fellowship. We had, we ate together and we slept in the same areas. We worked together. We went out together. I'm an old sailor. You know how they say, you fight like a sailor and you cuss like a sailor and you drink like a sailor. I was all of those things back then. But I had an encounter. That's all I'm going to say about that. I had an encounter. Because when I was out there, I was good at what I did. If you're going to do it, you might as well be good at it. That's what I say. But I joined the military again in 1986. I retired in 2007. My specialty was meteorology and oceanography. I was a TV weatherman, short. That's what I was. I briefed the battle groups and all of that stuff, right? But it was a fun job, but it wasn't something that I wanted to do after I retired from the military. But one thing, like I said, I do remember, the one thing I do like is the fact that we had the camaraderie. But what I want to bring to your attention is this. Even if we didn't like someone on the ship, or if we had issues with someone on the ship, or if we just did not get along, when it came down to fight, we fought together. In the Navy, we had this thing called battle stations. And we would go into general quarters. And general quarters was a very dynamic thing because without hesitation, as soon as you heard the alarm go off, you knew exactly where to go. You knew exactly what your job was. Like I said, I worked in the operations department, but I was also on the firefighting team. So if a fire broke out, we knew where to go to put the fire out. We had guys in Combat Information System, CIC. They tracked every target that was associated with our ship. So if anything got too close, they would pull the trigger and shoot it down. We had guys that would be on the lookout. We would call them bridge watches, and they would catch anything that the radar didn't catch. We had hospitals ready. We had the guys in engineering ready just in case something happened, and we had the helmsman who would drive the ship. We had this one special guy. He was the master helmsman. Not only was he good at what he did, he was exceptional at what he did. That's the guy you want behind the wheel when things jump off. The master helmsman. We had the firefighters and we had all that stuff. And we had one job. Our sole purpose was to defend and to save the ship. That was our job. Because it's not like we could call anyone to come and get us. We had to defend it ourselves. You're out in the middle of nowhere. So you had to defend your space. You had to defend where you slept. You had to defend your workspace. You had to defend everything that was associated with that ship. And it was a fun job. Again, damage control. They found out what the damage was. They put out the fires, the weapon system. We had guys, they were just eager to shoot something. They were like, man, I hope I see something. I just hope I see something because I want to put a 50 cal round right down the center. That was their mindset. And a guy like that, I loved having on my side. See, because here is what I know, right? When it comes down to warfare, you don't want the pansy guy with you. You don't want that guy that hasn't experienced anything with you. See, I want the guy that's missing a finger. I want that guy. I want the guy that's missing an eye on one side, that's got a scar in his side. That's the guy I want because I know that when things jump off, I know that I can call Bobby and Bobby's ready to fight. All Bobby's going to say is, where are they? That's the guy I want. If I come to you and you're not scratched up or hadn't gone through anything, I'm going to leave you on the sideline. Like I'll call you later when things are calm. When things are calm. But we had those guys. Now, like I said, I'm a Navy guy, right? And for all branches of the service, I don't want you to be jealous because I want you to know that Jesus was a Navy man. He hung out with, Peter, James, and John. They were fishermen. He walked on water. I'm just saying, that's who Jesus was. So don't be jealous. He didn't fly. He wasn't in the Air Force. No, that's not what he did. Frankie, he didn't disarm bombs in the Marine Corps. That's not what Jesus did. Jesus hung out with sailors. So I find myself in a special class. That Jesus was a sailor. That's who he was. But the armed forces, I enjoyed my time in the armed forces. So here's what, for those of you who don't know what the different armed forces do, let me give you a simple breakdown of what they do. The Air Force, they take control over everything in the air. Nothing moves without the Air Force knowing it. They track every target that moves all the time. The Marines, I like the Marines because what they do is they take territory. That's what they do. It's occupied by the enemy. As soon as they see Marines show up, they might as well move out because they know the Marines are coming. They're going to kick in your door. They're going to blow up your house, and they're going to take everything you got because Marines take territory. And then after they take it, how many of you know that just because you take it doesn't necessarily mean that you can maintain it? So after the Marines take it, we send in the army, and they occupy what has been taken from the enemy. See, because you just can't take it and expect the enemy to let you keep it. Sometimes you have to send in the forces to occupy what has already been taken. See, the mistake that we make is this. We'll take it, but then we'll turn our backs on it, and then the enemy will come back in. So we need the army to come in and occupy taken territory. Hallelujah. Now the Navy, we control the seas. Nothing moves on the seas. Not only do we control the surface of the seas, we control the air over the seas. And for those of you who've ever served in the Navy, you know that we control what's under the seas also. Because sometimes we have to understand it's the unseen thing that can sneak up on you and get you. So you constantly have to be on guard on what's above, what's on, and what's underneath. So we control the seas. Now the Coast Guard, I didn't hear any Coast Guard guys up here. But what they do is they control the coastal waterways. They own the rivers and the coastal waterways. And they do what they do. Now get this, the United States military has a global impact. We can be anywhere in the world inside of 3 days. I've seen an aircraft carrier go from New York City to the Straits of Gibraltar in 4 days. 4.5 acres of sovereign U.S. territory goes wherever it wants, when it wants, and stays however long it wants. Because who's going to mess with it? It has a global impact. But no matter how great the United States military is, God has a greater global impact. God has a greater global influence. God is greater at all things. So no matter how great we think the United States military is, it pales in comparison to the commission of God, to the comparison that God has upon us. Now, here's what I want you to understand. Every organization has a vision statement. Every organization has a philosophy. And in order for that organization to be successful, everyone associated with that organization has to buy in to that philosophy. They have to understand that this is the vision of the company. And just like the United States military and companies like Amazon and Walmart have a philosophy, God has a philosophy also. And he writes it right here. He makes it known unto us. Now, the philosophy for my life might be different from the philosophy for your life. See, because God is not a cookie cutter God. He's not a one-size-fits-all kind of God. What he is he tailor-makes a scenario just for us. And he develops a process just for us to follow so that we can get to where he needs us to be. That's the God that we serve. Now, I'm a big sports fan. I love sports. I love basketball. I love football, track and field. I even watch soccer, Dr. Clark. It is what it is. I understand what a pitch is. It's not a field. It's a pitch. That's what it is. I know. But I understand this, that every team has a coach, and every coach has a philosophy. And what the coach will do is he will look at each and every player, and he will determine if that player is good for his philosophy or not good for his philosophy, because they already have a winning strategy. And if that player does not fit into that winning philosophy, then that player is either cut or traded somewhere else. And he gets other players in to fit that philosophy. And God does the same thing. He doesn't toss anybody away, but he develops a philosophy that he knows that you will follow. That's what he'll do, because he knows our personality. Now, in order for us to get to where we need to be, God will not allow us to walk this path alone. He won't do it. What he will do is he will surround us with other people. So now I get to the crux of my message. My message is this: unity. It's a simple word, but it means so much. And my core scripture is this: Psalms 133, verses 1 through 3. Very short, and here's what it says. It says, "Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. It is like the precious oil upon the head that runs down the beard of Aaron, running down the edge of his garments. And it is like the dew of Hermon descending upon the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord commands a blessing, life forevermore." When God starts this psalm, he uses the word behold, which means to stand up and take notice. He's telling you this in those simple scriptures. And I was going through, I said, okay, God, if this is what you want me to say, then I'll say it. Behold, I want you to stand up and take notice to this, right? He said the word unity is this. The word unity is a oneness. It's a harmony. It is a unification. It is a camaraderie between those that are in your inner circle. And God calls it a precious oil. He calls unity a precious oil. God also calls it the dew of Hermon, which is a choice dew, which is a freshness, which means it has abundant life. In a nutshell, God calls unity good, pleasant, precious, choice, fresh, abundant life, and it commands a blessing. We're better together, is what God is saying. There is no separation in God. There is no big I's and little u in God. There's only one God, and we all should serve him. Going back to my days in the military, if we did not work in unity, if we did not work in camaraderie, if we did not work together, a couple of things could happen. The ship could get damaged, the ship could get lost, or we could lose a shipmate. And I want you to understand this, what it means to lose a shipmate. When a shipmate is lost, a son is lost. When a shipmate is lost, a daughter is lost. When a shipmate is lost, a husband or a wife is lost. A father or a mother is lost. Someone loses when we lose a shipmate. So if I don't do my job properly and it costs the life of a shipmate, then I am at fault. So I have to look at it on the other side. What if someone else is not doing their job and I lost my life? How would my children feel? How would my grandchildren feel? How would my wife feel knowing that her husband is never coming home again? So we have to understand that we have to do our job, and we have to do it to the best of our ability. Now, the goal of the enemy is to do this. His goal is to disrupt unity. That's what he does. And he does it in several ways. One way he does it is that he causes us to focus on things that are unimportant. He causes us to focus, or causes us to major in the minors. He does. He causes us to make mountains out of molehills. He causes us to be offended very easily over the smallest of things. That's his goal. But God's intent is for us to work together. His intent is to disrupt those things. Now, here's the thing. When we find ourselves anchored in God, then the enemy really can't do anything with us. And when I say anchored, is this, right? I want to give you a visual. I want you to get this visual. When a ship drops an anchor, the anchor falls to the bottom. It does. It falls to the bottom. We turn off the engines of the ship. And no matter which way the wind blows the ship, it never goes beyond the arc of the anchor chain itself. It never goes far from that spot because we're anchored right there. So when you find yourself anchored in the Lord, it doesn't matter what wind comes. It doesn't matter what doctrine comes through. It doesn't matter what others may say. It doesn't matter what others may do to try to get you off. As long as you're anchored there, God would not permit you to move. So we have to find ourselves anchored in the Lord. I said, okay, God, we'll stay anchored with you. We have to be on one accord with each other. Acts 2:1 says this, and when the day of Pentecost had fully come, they were all with one accord in one place. You're starting to see a common theme here. When we're on one accord, when we're in one place, when we're anchored in the Lord, you'll find that the very presence of God will show up in our lives because we're on one accord. See, you can't have division or two visions and expect God to show up. See, God's not schizophrenic. He's not one way today and then another way tomorrow. He's not high one day and then low the next. That's not the God that I serve. My God changes not. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That's the God that we serve. And when we find ourselves focusing on anything other than him, we find that we tend to get a little fearful. And God did not give us a spirit of fear. God gave us a sound mind to know that he is ultimately in charge of what is going on. Because when we find ourselves not anchored in him, we can find that everything that may come across, right, might upset us or might get us mad. You know, but God says that our focus is on the wrong thing. See, when he is the center of our joy, it doesn't matter what comes on the news. It doesn't matter. Because God is the center of my joy. I said, Lord, I love you. I thank you because you keep me centered. Because if I didn't find myself focused on you, then I would be upset every day based on what I heard or based on what I saw or based on what I felt. Now, something else we have to understand here is that in unity comes diversity. Diversity is what makes the house of God great because we all bring something to the table. And if you were to look at the average house of God, it crosses all racial lines, all socioeconomic lines. It crosses all educational lines. It crosses all those things because God uses all of us for his common purpose and for his common will. He wants us to be unified in what we do. He wants us to be unified in accomplishing his will. He wants us to be unified as we go and as we come. In Galatians 3:28, it says this: there is neither Jew nor Greek, neither slave nor free. There is neither male nor female, for we are all one in Christ Jesus. Just one. There is no difference. See, when I look at you, I should see Christ. That's what I should see. And that's what God wants us to see. Again, diversity is what makes the church great. We have to also remember that we also have to be unified, not only with one another, but unified with God. We have to make him the big in our lives. And we have to understand that we can't be fearful. So if you don't listen at anything else I say today, I want you to listen at this. God is not moved by your fear. God is moved by your faith when you're faced with unknown challenges. He's not moved by fear. He's moved by faith. So what do we have to do? We have to walk by faith and not by sight. We have to walk by what we know and not by what we see. I had an old pastor friend of mine say it this way: we have to learn what we know. Learn what you know. Because how many of you know it's not so much the head knowledge that gets us, it's the execution of the head knowledge that gets us, or the lack of execution of the head knowledge that gets us. Again, our goal is to be anchored in the Lord. Again, God is never moved by our fear, but he's moved by our faith. We have to remember, no matter what goes on around us, God is always in control. Nothing catches God by surprise. Not one thing catches him by surprise. He knew what was going to happen yesterday, just like he knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Nothing catches him by surprise. We have to understand that it is always up to us to stop and take a tactical pause. Now let me expound on that a little bit. In the military, we can get so wrapped up into accomplishing the mission that we tend to overlook certain things. But sometimes we do what they call a tactical pause. We'll look at a situation and we'll say, something's not right, something doesn't feel right, something doesn't look right. And we will stop and take another assessment of the situation. And once we stop and take another assessment of the situation, we tend to see the unseen. We tend to see that thing that we didn't see before. We tend to see that thing that was hiding in the bushes. We tend to know that there's something hiding behind the door. But sometimes in the natural, we have to do the same thing. We cannot be reactionary as Christians. We have to be the forerunners. We have to go and set the standard. We have to go and set the pace. The world is looking for answers, and the church is supposed to have the answers. But if we're all over the place, then they're going to be all over the place. But once we stop and take that tactical pause and anchor ourselves in the Lord, he will have a tendency to download unto us what we're supposed to do or what the world is supposed to do. Find your anchor in the Lord. Take that tactical pause. His ways are always greater than our ways. His ways are always higher than our ways. Just because things don't go the way we planned doesn't necessarily mean that we have to fly off the handle. I had an old pastor friend of mine say it this way: when things go left, don't go with them. Leave them right there. You stop. You wait. You see what's going on. Don't go with them. His ways are higher than our ways. And this, right? God is never wrong. God is never wrong. And we're not always right. I'm going to let that sink in for a minute. Well, God, you missed this. God's like, I didn't miss it. You missed it. I knew what was going on. Because here's what it is. We spend so much time trying to get God to agree on our plan that we don't stop to ask God, what's your plan? Lord, how can I help you accomplish what you need to accomplish on the earth? Instead of saying, God, this is what I want to do and I want you to bless off on it. Well, God says, I didn't create it. And how many of you know that whatever God does not create, he is not responsible for maintaining? So if you obtain it, that's outside of his will, then guess who has to maintain it? You do. And when God gives you something, he maintains it. It doesn't take any resources away from you. But when you create it, you have to maintain it. And guess what? You find that you lose and you use resources that you might not be able to use. So we have to let God do what God does. Again, God is never wrong, and we're not always right. I'm going to close with this, and I'm going to get out your way. I'm just going to do a recap. Each organization has a vision. Find the vision of the vision of the organization. As a matter of fact, I'll say it like this. Find out the vision that God has given the man and woman of God of this house and attach to that vision. It's not about you having your own vision. It's about you following the vision that God has given them. Find that vision. If you don't know, ask them what that vision is. And put your hands to something to help them to accomplish that vision. Because it is a great work. And what you do is you help the man and woman of God move forward with the vision that God has given unto them. There is a blessing in being unified. As a matter of fact, it commands a blessing to be unified. The third one, God is moved by faith and not by fear. And the fourth one, again, if you don't remember anything else I've said today other than the fact that Jesus was a sailor, remember this. God is always in control. Hallelujah.